feller told me one time they got a weed down here and they call it a loco weed. When the horses and cows eat it, they get wilder and all.
Dirk Blocker was only 14 years old when his father passed away unexpectedly in 1972. For more than 5 decades, he kept his emotions bottled up. Now, at the age of 67, Dan Blocker's son is finally opening up, and fans are stunned by what he has to say. The Brooklyn Nine-Nine actor is sharing how his father's fame from Bonanza impacted their family, the crowds of fans everywhere, the lost moments of childhood, and the lesser-known story behind his own acting journey. His words are revealing a side of Haas Cartwright's quiet son that few expected. Dan Blocker was born on December 10, 1928, in Dalb, Texas, and he didn't arrive quietly. Weighing in at 14 pounds, he set a record in Bowie County for his size at birth. Even his birth certificate was filled out incorrectly months later. The doctor mistakenly wrote Bobby Dawn instead of Bobby Dan Davis Blocker. His mother, Mary, endured one of the most difficult births in town history, while his father, Shah, couldn't have imagined that their enormous baby would one day become a television icon. That birth became a local legend. For years, townspeople spoke about it, and the 14-pound record remained unbroken until very recently. When Dan was 6, his family relocated to O'Donnell, a small farming town in West Texas. They were still mourning a tragedy. Just 1 year earlier, Dan's older sister, Virginia, had passed away from pneumonia at age 11. Dan had been 5 at the time. Despite the grief, the family moved forward. Shah opened a grocery store, and the Blockers lived in the back. Dan spent time playing behind the warehouse, and by 5th grade, he was helping in the store, bagging groceries and carrying 40-pound sacks of cattle feed for customers. O'Donnell had around 3,000 residents back then, with 2 lumber yards, 2 pharmacies, and 2 doctors. Dan became a known face in the community, not just as the grocer's kid, but because of his size and his strong work ethic. He didn't just grow tall, he grew fast. By age 10, he was already 5 feet tall and weighed 105 pounds. By 12, he was 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. He wasn't just towering over the other kids, he was larger than many grown men. He worked alongside them on grain trucks and in elevators, doing any job that required muscle. Locals even cleared out Main Street on Saturday nights so Dan could box with older teens. By the age of 13, he was regularly going up against men in their 20s, and he never lost. There's even a local tale that he once lifted a car off a man after it fell from a jack. True or not, no one doubted his strength. By high school, Dan was 6 feet 4 inches, weighed 275 pounds, and wore size 14.5 shoes. His dad often joked that Dan was too big to ride and too small to pull a wagon, practically useless. But that size would soon open unexpected doors. At 12, Dan's parents enrolled him in the Texas Military Institute in San Antonio. They likely hoped the structure and discipline would shape him into something more than just a big kid. That same school had once trained General Douglas MacArthur. Dan gained toughness, focus, and leadership skills, traits that would prove valuable later. After TMI, he attended Hardin-Simmons University in 1946, where he played football. With his physical build, he was a natural on the field. At 18, he was strong, fast, and admired by teammates. But Dan's path shifted at Sul Ross State University, where he transferred in 1947. There, he volunteered backstage for a school play, Arsenic and Old Lace. They needed someone big enough to carry fake dead bodies. Dan agreed, and something inside him changed. Being around the theater, watching it all come together, sparked a new passion. He changed his major from physical education to drama. The athlete had found a new calling. Though he still played football at Sul Ross, theater took over his world. He worked odd jobs to afford school, including performing in rodeos and working as a bar bouncer. But on stage, he discovered purpose. He had the size for imposing roles, but audiences were moved by his gentleness and emotional depth. His teachers saw real talent, and his peers encouraged him. He graduated in 1950 with a degree in speech and drama. Many assumed he'd pursue professional sports, but Dan wanted something more meaningful. Professional football teams offered him contracts. Boxing promoters reached out. But Dan turned them all down. He didn't want to rely on his fists or his size to make a living. He wanted to create. He wanted to act. That same year, he moved to Boston to work in summer stock theater, 2,000 miles away from Texas, without knowing a single person. He took on roles for little money, learned lines quickly, and performed weekly plays. It was grueling but deeply fulfilling. Dan thought he was finally on his way to becoming a full-time actor in Boston, but life had other plans. In November 1950, he was drafted into the U.S. Army as the Korean War escalated. At 6 feet 4 inches and over 250 pounds, he posed a logistical challenge. The military spent a month just locating boots that would fit his size 14.5 feet. After basic training in Louisiana, he was deployed to Japan, and then sent straight to the Korean front lines. In December 1951, Dan joined F Company, 2nd Battalion, 179th Infantry Regiment, 45th Division. His fellow soldiers quickly gave him a nickname, the Big Un. Combat came quickly. His unit was assigned to the freezing trenches along the Jamestown line, where snow, mud, and constant gunfire filled their days. Dan arrived as a private, but his natural leadership earned him quick promotions, first to corporal, then sergeant, and eventually master sergeant. He wasn't just following commands, he was guiding others. Over 209 days, Dan saw intense combat. On Christmas Eve in 1951, he and his squad were pinned down on Hill 255 for 10 long hours in the freezing dark. Then, on May 25, 1952, while defending Hill 200, the fighting became even more brutal. 6 American soldiers were killed and 21 wounded, but the unit managed to take out 132 enemy troops. Dan survived ambushes and mortar attacks. During one battle, he was shot while trying to rescue wounded comrades. That act earned him a Purple Heart, but it also left a lasting impact on him. The war deeply changed Dan. After returning home, he became a vocal critic of future wars, especially the Vietnam War. He didn't want American bombs dropped on innocent people, not after seeing the horrors himself. Yet, the war also revealed another side of him. He could lead, strategize, and stay calm under pressure. He helped plan missions and led patrols in dangerous places like Pork Chop Hill and Old Baldy. Once, his squad walked right into an ambush, outnumbered and far from safety. Instead of retreating on enemy land, Blocker remained calm and led the charge back. His large build allowed him to carry wounded soldiers to safety, though it also made him an easy target. Still, he never wavered. By the time his unit was rotated out in July 1952, he had received numerous honors, including the Combat Infantryman Badge, Korean Service Medal with 2 campaign stars, and the Korean Presidential Unit Citation. His Army service officially ended on September 24, 1952. Just 2 days later, he married Dolia Lee Parker, the woman he had loved throughout the war. He had written to her from Korea, and now they were finally reunited for good. They held a modest ceremony in Carlsbad, New Mexico. That same week, Blocker returned to school at Sul Ross State Teachers College, picking up where he had left off and earning a master's degree in drama. Acting remained his dream, but practical needs came first. He took a job teaching high school English and drama in Sonora, Texas. His students remembered how his deep, resonant voice echoed through the halls, especially during Shakespeare readings. After a year in Sonora, Blocker moved to Carlsbad, New Mexico, where he taught 6th grade and coached at Eddy Elementary School. Even while teaching, he never abandoned his passion for acting. He treated his classroom like a stage, keeping his love for drama alive. Then something unexpected happened. During a summer vacation, Blocker and his family took a trip from Sonora to Hollywood. It wasn't a job-hunting trip, they were just on vacation. But fate had other plans. While making a phone call in a booth, dressed in cowboy boots, a flashy shirt, and a huge straw hat, Blocker caught the attention of a talent agent. At 6 feet 4 inches tall, he looked like he'd stepped right out of a western. No audition was needed, The agent could tell just by looking at him that Blocker was made for TV. Meanwhile, Blocker's wife and children sat in their station wagon, completely unaware their lives were about to change. It was perfect timing. In the late 1950s, Hollywood was full of westerns, and Blocker fit the mold perfectly. His Texas roots, towering presence, and rugged charm were exactly what producers wanted. That random moment on the sidewalk turned into the start of something big. But Blocker hadn't moved to California to become a star. In 1956, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue a PhD in education at UCLA. He was committed to academics. To support his family while studying, he worked as a substitute teacher in Glendale schools. He and his wife had 4 children, twin daughters Deborah Lee and Dana Lynn, born in 1953, followed by David in 1955 and Dirk in 1957. Life was hectic. He juggled studies, work, and fatherhood, but somehow kept it all in balance. Dan Blocker didn't launch into stardom overnight. In 1957, he appeared in a Three Stooges short film called Outer Space Jitters, playing a monster known as the Goon. It was a light-hearted sci-fi comedy, and he was credited under the name Don Blocker. Standing 6 feet 4 inches and weighing over 300 pounds, he wore a full alien costume. The film was only 17 minutes long and shot in just 2 days, but even then, Blocker knew how to use his size to stand out, even in a comedy sketch. The year before, in 1956, he made his television debut in The Sheriff of Cochise, playing a bartender. He didn't stick to one character type. That same year, he also appeared in Gunsmoke as a cavalry lieutenant, and returned 2 years later in a different role. He was also seen in Have Gun, Will Travel and Colt .45. In 1957 alone, he showed up in several westerns, including The Rifleman and Cheyenne, usually playing tough guys, outlaws, or enforcers. These weren't glamorous roles, but they helped him get noticed. People remembered the big man with the powerful voice. Then came Maverick, the show that changed everything. Blocker played a character named Hognose Hughes. He later called it the most important role of his early career. While it was a western, Maverick stood out for its humor and clever writing. Blocker fit right in. He wasn't just physically imposing, he was funny, too. That role showed casting directors that he could blend strength with charm. That mix of comedy and drama would later define his most iconic role, Hoss Cartwright. But it all started with Hognose Hughes. In 1958, Blocker landed a recurring role on another western, Cimarron City, where he played Tiny Carl Buetinger. The show only lasted 1 season, but it created a crucial connection. Producer David Dortort had seen Blocker in previous roles, including as a blacksmith and a cattleman in episodes of The Restless Gun, and liked what he saw. So when Dortort began developing a new show about a family of ranchers in the American West, he had someone in mind. When the creators of Bonanza started working on the show in 1959, they weren't sure who would fill most roles. But one thing was certain, Hoss Cartwright had been written with Dan Blocker in mind. The producers never even auditioned anyone else. Behind that large frame was a man with a master's degree. He had once taught English and had planned to pursue a PhD. He brought all of that intelligence and thoughtfulness into the role. Instead of portraying Hoss as a fool, he played him as kind, reflective, and full of heart. The writers took notice. They began to adjust Hoss's character to reflect Blocker himself. What started as comic relief evolved into the emotional center of the show. By the 3rd season, when Bonanza reached number 2 in the ratings, viewers had truly connected with Hoss. He became more than just the muscle, he was the moral compass, the one who reminded audiences what the Cartwrights stood for. Behind the scenes, though, things were intense. Unlike today's TV shows that film 10 or 12 episodes per season, Bonanza produced over 30 episodes each year. That meant working 5 days a week, 14-hour days, nearly without pause. Dan Blocker was expected on set by 7 a.m. and didn't leave until 9 p.m. The heat, the heavy costumes, the horseback riding, and the stunts were grueling, especially for a man his size. There were times he even passed out from the heat. Still, he pushed forward. He once admitted that he saw his television family more often than his real wife and 4 children. By 1972, he had filmed 415 episodes. That kind of workload would be unimaginable for most modern actors. What makes his story even more touching is what he gave up. Long before Bonanza, his ambitions didn't include fame. He dreamed of a future in education. After earning his master's degree in Texas, he worked as a teacher, teaching English, drama, and even 6th grade students. His move to California wasn't driven by a desire for Hollywood stardom. He had enrolled at UCLA, hoping to earn a PhD. Acting came unexpectedly when someone saw him in a cowboy outfit and pulled him into the industry. Even after being cast on Bonanza, he tried to balance school and acting. Early interviews show him talking about juggling his studies with filming. But the demands became too much, memorizing scripts, acting long hours, doing press. It left no room for anything else. By 1961, he had to put his studies on hold, and he never got to return. Later in life, he confessed that not finishing his PhD was his biggest regret. Still, his contribution to television was significant. Haas wasn't just a big-hearted cowboy, he was a character who brought genuine emotion to viewers. By the mid-1960s, studies confirmed that audiences saw Haas as the emotional core of Bonanza. Blocker once said he played the role guided by a quote, "If there is any kindness we can show, let us do it now. For we will never pass this way again." And he lived by those words, both on and off screen. In the 1960s, one show dominated American television. Bonanza wasn't just popular, it became a cultural ritual. From 1964 to 1967, it was the #1 show in the U.S. Every Sunday at 9 p.m., around 19 million households tuned in. That amounted to a 36.3 rating share. In just a few seasons, it climbed from 45th place to 2nd and eventually to the top. For 9 consecutive years, Bonanza remained in the top 5, a record at the time. And its reach extended beyond the U.S., airing in nearly 50 countries, including Canada, Brazil, France, Thailand, and Saudi Arabia. It wasn't until 1967 that CBS found a true competitor, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Before that, even the Judy Garland show couldn't compete. Blocker wasn't just playing a rancher, he became one in real life. In 1963, while Bonanza was skyrocketing in popularity, he opened a steakhouse called the Bonanza Sirloin Pit. The first location was in Westport, Connecticut, housed in a converted 1925 Greyhound bus station. The concept was a hit. The name was familiar and trusted. By 1966, 2 brothers, Sam and Charles Way, bought the brand and expanded it quickly. Around the same time, in 1965, another group launched a similar chain in Indiana called Ponderosa Steakhouse. Both chains grew rapidly. In 1989, Metro Media purchased both brands. By then, Bonanza restaurants numbered around 600. The 2 chains eventually merged in 1997 but kept their individual names. By 2019, about 75 locations still existed. Through it all, Blocker had transformed TV fame into a tangible business, one people could experience firsthand. His film career also progressed. In 1963, he appeared in Come Blow Your Horn alongside Frank Sinatra. The Neil Simon comedy was a success, earning $12.7 million and becoming one of the top films of the year. In 1968, Blocker reunited with Sinatra for Lady in Cement, a crime thriller where he played Rudy Koerman, a ruthless businessman. The movie captured that classic 1960s Miami crime vibe with style and grit. Away from the cameras, there were lesser-known details. During Bonanza's peak, all 4 of Dan Blocker's children took karate lessons from Chuck Norris, before he was a household name. They even trained alongside Michael Landon's kids. The cast had grown into a close-knit family. Blocker had married Dolia Parker in 1952, whom he met during college. They remained together until his passing in 1972. Their son David became a producer and later won an Emmy in 1998. Their other son, Dirk, followed in his father's footsteps and became an actor too. Dan was cast in a leading role for The Long Goodbye. It was a challenging part, a washed-up, alcoholic writer, completely different from the kind-hearted Haas he was known for. This was Dan's opportunity to prove he could do more than just play the lovable cowboy. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. After his passing, the role went to Sterling Hayden, who delivered a strong performance and even improvised lines while genuinely drunk on set. Director Robert Altman never fully recovered from losing Dan. He even considered scrapping the film entirely but decided to continue and added a tribute in the credits. That one line, dedicated to Dan Blocker, showed how much he was loved and respected by the cast and crew. Just as we personally suffered a loss, so the audience suffered one too. The premiere episode of season 14 had decent ratings due to curiosity, but the numbers soon plummeted by nearly 40%. NBC partly blamed the decline on the new Tuesday time slot, but the real reason was clear: fans missed Haas. They didn't want to watch Bonanza without him. Even Lorne Greene, who played Ben Cartwright, recognized it. He told his wife, "That's it. It's finished." And he was right. NBC canceled the show that November, and the final episode aired on January 16, 1973. After 14 seasons and 431 episodes, Bonanza came to an end. In the small town of O'Donnell, Texas, there's a quiet spot that still remembers the man adored by millions. It's easy to pass by if you're not paying attention. But there stands a bronze statue of Dan Blocker, the man the world knew as Haas Cartwright. The statue was unveiled on July 4, 1973, just over a year after Dan's death. He was only 43. The plaque beneath says it best: "Thanks to film, Haas Cartwright will live." But all too seldom does the world get to keep a Dan Blocker. The statue was placed on what was once an empty lot. Years before, it had stood next to his father Shaq Blocker's general store. Back then, Dan, known as Bobby Dan, would help out as a boy. Across the street is the old bank building, now home to the O'Donnell Heritage Museum. The building still looks as it did in 1925. On the second floor, a dedicated room tells Dan's story, from being born a hefty 14 pounds, the largest baby ever recorded in Bowie County, to his journey as one of America's most beloved TV personalities. As you approach O'Donnell on Highway 87, a large mural of Dan welcomes you, painted across the side of a barn like a proud symbol of the town's gentle giant. His son, Dennis Dirk Blocker, was born in Los Angeles on July 31, 1957. He got an early start in show business, appearing in a car commercial with his father at just 7 years old. But life changed drastically when Dirk lost his dad at 14. Still, he stayed determined. Just 2 years later, he made his TV debut on Marcus Welby, MD in 1974 at age 16. By 19, he had landed a recurring role on Baa Black Sheep, playing First Lieutenant Jerry Bragg from 1976 to 1978. Dirk's career steadily grew from there. He appeared in Poltergeist, 1982, Starman, 1984, and classic series like MASH * and The X-Files. He even took part in 2 Bonanza reunion films, Bonanza, The Return, and Bonanza, Under Attack, playing a reporter. His biggest role came much later when he joined the cast of Brooklyn Nine-Nine at age 56. As Detective Hitchcock, he appeared in 147 episodes from 2013 to 2021. A new generation came to know him, not as Haas's son, but as a talented comedic actor in his own right. Now, at 66, Dirk is starting to open up about life as Dan Blocker's son. He remembers how his dad's fame seemed to follow them everywhere. Crowds would gather around them in public. That constant attention made Dirk long for a different kind of life. He didn't chase the spotlight. Instead, he chose the path of a character actor, supporting roles, low-profile work, away from the glare. Even as he stepped away from fame, he never truly stepped out of his father's shadow. That shadow was both a source of pride and pressure. He wanted to honor Dan's legacy but also show that he could succeed on his own. Dirk has shared the surreal experience of watching his father on television while remembering the man who used to tuck him in at night. Not many people grow up that way, seeing the world adore someone you still grieve. Dan's sudden death in 1972 changed everything for Dirk. He was just a teenager, and the loss shaped the man he became. What left the greatest mark on Dirk were the values Dan lived by. Dan Blocker wasn't just a TV icon, he was a humble, genuine person. On set, people talked less about his talent and more about his kindness. He didn't act like a star, he acted like a decent man who happened to be on television. That honesty influenced Dirk deeply. He saw how his father balanced fame with family and stayed grounded despite the spotlight. It's a legacy Dirk has carried with him ever since.